Hello, and welcome to Your Health Matters. My name is Dr. Peter Hogenkamp, and I'm going to be your host today in our discussion of a topic which I have been meaning to discuss on the program for many months now, and that is the dangers of excessive screen time. I think about this a lot as I walk around and spend time in airports or in the office with my patients, and I see so often people just sitting there with their head down looking at their screen like this. I brought my phone for a reason today, and that's to show you that when I talk today about the dangers of excessive screen time, I'm talking about myself as well as everybody else. I'm not talking about just kids, I'm talking about adults as well. We all spend too much time on our screens, and there's consequences to it. And so to introduce the whole kind of this discussion, I've been thinking about the best way to kind of give a framework to this discussion. And I came up with the idea that the dangers of screen time, it's very similar to the old Greek myth of the sword of Damocles. And as I thought about it more and more, I went to my screens and I looked up on my computer, what was the real, we all know in general what the sword of Damocles is. But I thought I'd look it up and get the specifics of it because it might help apply to what I was trying to talk about today. And the more I read, the more I realized that the metaphor is actually very good. It fits perfectly. So Damocles was a member of the court of King Dionysus, who was a very powerful ruler of the city of Syracuse in Sicily. And Damocles was sitting around one day flattering his king and said, wouldn't it be lovely to be in your shoes? Wouldn't I love to just sit on your throne for a day? And so King Dionysus says, Damocles, I'm going to let you sit on my throne for a day. But above the throne, I'm going to tie a large sword with the single hair of his horse. And so there, Damocles sat on the throne, enjoying everything that there was to enjoy about the throne. The wealth, the beautiful fragrances from the perfumes that were by the throne, all the dancing and the court jesters that were there for his entertainment, all the wonderful food that the king was served every day. But as you enjoy these things, you will also have this sword that hangs over you, and if that thread breaks, your reign is over. And what he was trying to say that in amassing all his wealth and power, he had created many enemies. And that he was just the break of a single horsehair away from having everything fall apart for him, having it all end. And I think that's a great analogy for screen time. Because, like being a king, there are wonderful positives. There's a lot of benefits to screen time. We think about how often we use screens in our day. For instance, right now, you are probably watching this. In fact, you are watching this on a screen. It might be your TV. That's a screen. It might be your tablet. That's a screen. It might be your phone. That's a screen. It could be your computer. And although we look at computers oftentimes as our work vessels, they're screens. So all these good things that come out of screens, I don't think I'd be able to cook without a screen. I don't know if I'd be able to find my way to get anywhere without a screen. There are so many positive benefits of screens. And like King Dionysus, it's good to be a king. There's positives to it, but there's also negatives. And I wanted to focus today on the negative impact of excessive screen use because research has shown, medical studies have shown that there are many dangers associated with excessive screen use, and it's becoming a major problem in our society today. To this end, our Surgeon General 2 years ago declared that social media was a major health risk, similar to the health risks posed by cigarettes back in 1964. We all remember, or we all are aware of, the Surgeon General coming out in 1964 and saying that cigarettes are a danger to your health. And when he did that back in 1964, the percentage of adults that smoke was 40%. In 2024, when this episode is being taped, the percentage of adults that smoke is less than 12%. I bring that up because I think it's an important thing that we call attention to these issues, and that calling attention to them can and will lead to improved behavior. 28% fewer people smoke in 2024 than did in 1964. And so hopefully by calling our attention to these dangers, things will improve. We'll see less excessive screen use. So let's start out with a definition of excessive. I already talked about what is screen time. Again, any tablet, computer, any time you're spending on your watching TV or your phone, that's all screen time. It's additive. It's cumulative. You can't say, well, I was watching TV for 2 hours, but that doesn't count. It does count. It's a screen. I think mostly we're referring to times on our phones, but the tablets count, the computers count as well. So excessive screen time is actually defined, and it's defined by age. So if you are from 0 to 2, in other words, our youngest society members, our children, from 0 to 2, there is no safe screen time. From 0 to 2, all screen time is excessive. If you are a parent of a child who's 0 to 2, you should not be allowing that child to engage in any screen time at all. And we're going to talk about the evidence for that in a minute. If your child is from 2 to 5, the maximum allowable screen time is 1 hour. And that's maximum. The less, the better. As far as older children, from children 5 to 17, screen time should not exceed 2 hours on a consistent basis. And this does not obviously include any screen time that the kids are using in efforts for their schoolwork. So if a child is using his or her computer for schoolwork, that doesn't count. We're talking about recreational use now as well. What about adults? Adults should follow the same rule that any screen time over 2 hours that doesn't involve work is excessive. So I'm going to give you some more tips about those limits a little bit later in the program. But I wanted to start off today with some of the evidence that we've accumulated, which tells us that screen time is dangerous. And this comes from the AMA Journal of Pediatrics from 2024, so it's a very recent study. In this study, 8,000 children were studied, and they found that if kids had 4 hours of screen time or more at 1 year of age, and I know that sounds a little far-fetched, but it happens all the time, that this led to problems when the child was older, at 2 to 4 years of age, of a problem with communication, a decrease in child's ability to solve problems, increasing problems in developmental delays with fine motor skills, and most importantly, that it was found that these children who had excessive screen time when they were 1 were far behind in terms of their social skills. And so I just want to kind of reiterate, what this means. I realize that it's easy when you're a busy parent to hand your kid your phone or to turn the TV on and let them watch television. Remember now, TV is a screen. Television counts as a screen time. You're trying to make dinner, put the TV on, let them watch Sesame Street or some other type of quality programming. But that comes as a cost. That comes at a cost to that child's development later in life, as I mentioned. Decreasing communication skills, decreasing skills in problem solving, increasing developmental delays with fine motor skills. And that's because these children, instead of playing with stuff and developing their fine motor skills, they're simply watching a screen, staring at a screen. Lastly, the social skills things. I I don't think that can be emphasized enough, how screen time is affecting all of our social development. Here's another study. This one probably the first, the landmark study done about screen time. It was an NIH study, that's the National Institute of Health. And they were talking about kids who used more than 2 hours of screen time. These are children from 2 to 5 who used more than 2 hours of screen time. It affected their language skills and their ability to think as measured by their performance on standardized tests. And why is that important? Well, standardized tests, a friend of mine is trying to get, his kid's trying to go to medical school. And he can't get into medical school because he's not doing well enough on the MCAT, which is the medical college admission test. I have another friend of mine who's trying to get his kid into college, hasn't done well on his SATs, having a hard time getting into the college that he wants to go to. I realized that standardized tests are somewhat controversial, but these things are important. And in this case, they're just a measure. That's how we measure how people are able to think, how they're able to use their language. So kids having excessive screen time, more than 2 hours in that 2 to 5 age range, were suffering as a consequence in their scores on standardized tests for thinking and language skills. The other issue about screen time is that it's a bit of an either-or phenomenon. And what I mean by that is, if you are watching something on your screen, you're not going to be playing with blocks. You're not going to be going outside. You're not going to be exploring the outdoors. You're not going to be playing with other children. How many times have you looked into a room and see 4 kids in a room and they're all staring at screens, not interacting with each other? Honestly, I see that and it just makes my stomach twist inside. And maybe I'm a little bit over dramatic, but the evidence suggests that I'm not. And here's the evidence. Number one, when you're playing with screens and you're not playing with toys, it is a great detriment to the development of your imagination. This is probably my biggest concern. I think imagination is such a wonderful and such a human thing. It's one of the things that kind of defines us as a race. It gives us great advantage over so many other species because of our imagination, and we're throwing away our opportunity to develop our imagination by staring at screens, particularly when we're very young. If you are a parent and you want your child to be an imaginative person, then you want your child to interact with his or her environment, play with toys, go outside, walk around and just observe. If your kid is walking around stuck to a screen, he's not observing all the things that we want your child to observe. His imagination, her imagination is suffering as a consequence. If you are on a screen and you are not exploring the outdoors, what's going to happen? Well, your health is going to suffer from the consequence of your weight. It's no secret that we're having a childhood obesity problem in this country, and there is a direct correlation between the amount of time your child spends on his or her phone and your child's BMI, which is how we measure weight. There's a linear correlation between weight and cell phone use. We all know the problems of obesity, which can lead to heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, arthritis, depression. All these problems are directly related to obesity, and obesity in children is directly related to screen time. If your child is deciding to play or watch a screen, he is then not deciding to play with other children, which has a very detrimental effect on his or her social skills. Social skills are one of those things that it's a little bit harder to define. I mean, you can say kids who are on phones too much, they score worse on standardized tests. That's kind of an easy thing for us to grasp. But social skills are harder to measure. But are they less important? No, they're not. I mean, good social skills are probably the number one determinant of your child's happiness. How well is your child going to function in life, in this social world in which we live? Human beings are a social species. We're a herd species. We need those social skills to guide our interaction with our fellow human beings. It may be harder to measure social skills, but that doesn't mean they're less important. Lastly, in this one, in talking about things that are harder to define, so watching screens causes this development of tunnel vision. Watch me. I'm looking straight ahead at this screen. I'm looking like this. I don't have peripheral vision, watch the environment, looking for animals and birds in the sky, watching for cars, watching trees, trying to decipher what plant this is. All those things that you get from observing your environment, they go away when you're staring at your phone. Lastly, staring at your screen like that leads to a large increase in developmental delay among our children. What is developmental delay? Well, kids aren't learning to read as quickly, they're not learning to tie their shoes as quickly, they're not learning to interact, their social skills are going down. All these things are directly related to the amount of screen time a child has. On my last point in this subject, I want you to think about dimensions, and that is, this is a two-dimensional experience, me staring at my phone. Whereas when you're interacting with your environment, that's a three-dimensional experience. It's just literally two-dimensional screen, whereas you look around, you're adding another dimension. You're getting depth, height, width. All you get on the screens is X and Y. It's a two-dimensional versus a three-dimensional experience. And you're not allowing your brain to develop an appreciation for the three-dimensional experience. When you look at a phone, it is a visual experience, and when there's audio, it becomes an audio experience as well. When you're experiencing your environment, not only do you have a visual component, you have an auditory component, but you can smell your environment. I went for a walk this morning, and I could smell the beautiful smell of the hay that my neighbor was cutting. I could feel the wind ruffle my hair. It felt great. We're having such lovely weather, for which I'm very thankful. I could feel the breeze across my face. I could taste the salt that came in dripping into my mouth from the sweat that dripped down my face. And I'm not trying to be excessively graphic here, but all these senses are very important. And when we are on our phones, we are only giving use to vision and auditory senses. And again, these two senses are probably the predominant senses that we have in our life, but these other senses are very important for the development of our brain. Alrighty. I was talking before about evidence about screen time. I just wanted to mention a couple things before I get on to some nuts and bolts about how we can fix this problem. And that is increased screen time, decreasing reading scores in standardized tests. It's decreasing our attention span. And we have a national epidemic of attention deficit disorder. All of our screen time is making it worse. The last thing is, in terms of studies, the ability to converse is at risk here. Our ability to hold a good conversation with other adults. Because when you are listening to your phone, it's passive listening. And that passive listening does not give us the back and forth that we get when we converse with another adult. We're not able to gauge a person's facial expression, their body language. All these skills that we need to pick up, which help us socially and also help develop our brain, they're not there when you're simply watching a phone. There's no back and forth. It's a one-way conversation. And that one-way conversation does not utilize our brains. So, I talked about some nuts and bolts tips, and we're going to go back to the age breakdown. 0 to 2. There is no acceptable or healthy amount of screen time for a child 0 to 2. None, zero, nil, nada. You simply can't do it. It's all harmful. Ages 2 to 5, 1 hour per day of quality programming. Don't just hand your child a phone. Now, I want to kind of digress here for a second and tell you that all the things I'm talking about today, I have been guilty of. That's one of the reasons I love doing this show, because as I'm thinking more and more about how screens are so dangerous for us, I did a lot of research, and this research helps me in my own life, helps me in my practice, guiding my patients. So I really like to learn about these things. And remember, like the sword of Damocles, it's good to be king. There are benefits of screens, but there are also dangers. The benefits of the screen, as I prepared for this talk, doing research, I was using my computer, my phone, to look these things up. I'm not saying that all screen time is bad. I'm saying that we have to be judicious about it. So, going back to 2 to 5 hour, children 2 to 5, 1 hour a day maximum. We should be consistent with this. And we should co-watch with our children. We should sit down with them, and we should co-watch. And we should comment about these things. If we see this, they're singing a song in this program, we should sing with them. If the children are doing something, we should explain to our children why they're doing that. This is how we can make turn screen time into a positive experience. Again, within the allowable limits of 1 hour. Children 6 to 12, the screen time should be consistently less than 2 hours. Again, when I say consistently, I mean, every once in a while, this, screen time may go up for some reason. You're traveling in a car, you've got relatives over, whatever the cause may be, but consistently should be less than 2 hours. And we should make sure that the screen time does not interfere with the big three. And what are the big three? The big three are sleep, physical activity, and nutrition. I would add a fourth thing to that, and that would be social interaction. So, how do we do that? Well, we should make media-free times for our 6 to 17-year-old children. I would suggest dinner. That's something that we've done. I can still hear my wife. My children are all growing out of the house now, but my daughter was recently visiting, and during dinner she brought her phone out, and she got this kind of thing going, and she put her phone away. So we have made our dinner hour media-free to interact with each other, and I would suggest that you do that too. It's a perfect time for it. Number 2 is the first hour of the day. When you get up, how many people roll over and look at their screen? And if you want to make sure that no one texted you overnight or this or that, I want to make sure I haven't missed a phone call from the answering service or this kind of thing. But don't sit there and scroll through your phone for the first hour of the day, and I'm going to tell you why. Because when you sit there staring at your face for the phone for the first hour of the day, it actually increases the level of stress hormones in your body. In other words, adrenaline. And when you surge that adrenaline like that, it does all kinds of bad things for you. Puts you into a fight or flight kind of status. Looking around for the enemy. It also increases your blood pressure. It raises your blood sugar. So you're not trying to stimulate your stress hormone production. You only want to do that when you're in a truly stressful situation, like running from a grizzly bear. Most of us are not going to have that situation on our day-to-day living. So don't get the stress hormones going. First hour of the day, very important not to use that phone. Last hour of the day. I love symmetry. First hour of the day, last hour of the day. And the reason for the last hour of the day, I think we all would realize, would be decreased sleep. I've done several shows on sleep. I've got another one coming up. Sleep is important. Sleep is good for our health. And although sleep dysfunction is common, that doesn't mean that it's okay. And one of the easiest ways to improve our sleep is to not look at your phone for the last hour of the day. Now, it turns out that the closer a screen is to you, the more that it stimulates your brain. And we don't want to stimulate our brain at night. We want our brain to relax so that we can sleep. So watching a TV from 10 or 15 feet across the room is much less harmful to your sleep than watching a phone from 6 inches. So keep that in mind. Number 2, the light, the blue light that emanates from these screens decreases your melatonin production. Now, we all know about melatonin. A lot of people use it as a sleep aid, but it turns out that your brain, this little pineal gland in the center of your brain, produces melatonin at your bedtime. And that melatonin induces a state of sleepiness. That blue light decreases melatonin production. This has been studied. You don't want to do that. Now, people will say, well, I'll just take a melatonin gummy instead. Turns out that the endogenous melatonin that you produce in your pineal gland, which goes straight to your brain, is much more effective than the exogenous melatonin that you take in a gummy, put it into your stomach, then absorbed to your bloodstream. The bloodstream then takes it to your brain. It's much more effective for the endogenous melatonin produced straight in your pineal gland. All right. In addition to media-free times, we should have media-free zones. And this one's going to be difficult for us to accept because the first media-free zone we should have is our bedroom. Going back to what I said before, keep the phones last hour of sleep. Well, if you keep them out of the bedroom, that's the best place. You do the most good by keeping your phone out of the bedroom. Keeping it off our dinner table, as I mentioned earlier. I wanted to give you some other other tips on helping you in your life decrease phone time. As I mentioned, if you're watching a program or if your children are watching a program, co-watch it with them. Choose it wisely. Some programs are better than others. Don't just hand your kid a phone. Limit your own use. As we all know as parents, children model our behavior. If we're addicted to phones, our children are going to be too. We should model the behavior that we want our kids to have. And it's also very, very good for you as an adult to decrease your phone. I'm going to talk about that in the last 2 minutes that we have left. So why should adults limit their screen time? Well, number one is because we want our children to use our screens less, so we need to model that behavior. Secondly, it's good for us as well. Adult phone time is associated with obesity, just like it is for kids. Adult phone time or screen time leads to decreased social interaction, which increases depression rates, increases anxiety rates. Adult phone time decreases our sleep, just like it does for kids. It also turns out that it affects our nutrition. The more people watch their phone, the less fruits and vegetables they eat, and the more fast food they have. And that's something that's been studied. I'm not just kind of making this up. There's several studies that have shown this. The more you watch your phone, the less you eat fruits and vegetables, the more fast food you eat. As a physician, I've been speaking to my patients for over 30 years now, and I've gotten this picture that, one of the biggest things that adults are afraid of is dementia. You hear people say all the time, geez, I'd much rather just have a heart attack and die than to kind of have dementia. People have a fear of this, of losing their capacity kind of thing, and I think that's very natural. So here's something you can do about it. If you're concerned about dementia and other neurodegenerative disorders, as Parkinson's disease, the more you use the phone, the more likely you are to have dementia and Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative disorders. That's been medically studied. If you are interested in making better decisions, use your phone less. More phone use leads to more problems with decision making. And decision making is how we define ourselves. The course of is how we change the arc of our life. The better decisions we make, the better our lives. If you want to make better decisions, use your phone less. Think more. What can we do instead of using our phone? Brain healthy activities, exercise, reading, meditation, listening to music, go outside. Thank you very much for your attention today. Please tell everybody about Your Health Matters with Dr. Peter Hogenkamp. Have a great day. Cheers.